The snow leopard held the ridge shadow because the ridge decided everything. Above the valley, where air thinned and sound lost its certainty, the mountain folded into itself. Slabs of stone leaned against one another at angles that never settled, fractured by frost and time. Snow gathered where wind allowed it, drifted into bowls, scoured away from edges. Nothing here was even. Nothing was forgiving. The snow leopard lay pressed into a crease of rock just below the ridgeline, her body aligned so precisely with the stone that even the mountains seemed to forget her. She had been there since before first light. Her coat, thick, pale, patterned with rosettes like shadows cast by clouds, broke her outline into pieces that belonged to the terrain. Her long tail curved around her hind legs, its tip resting against stone to keep warmth from bleeding away. Only her eyes moved, slow and deliberate, tracking a world that shifted while she did not. The ridge was not a place to rush. Wind crossed it from 3 directions depending on minute changes in temperature. Scents arrived late and often distorted, pulled apart by cold air that sank without warning. Sound travelled farther than it should, then vanished completely, swallowed by rock. The snow leopard understood this without thinking. She had been born into it. Below her, the slope fell away into broken scree and then into a narrow alpine basin where sparse grass clung to soil between stones. Farther down, the land softened enough for a trickle of water to carve a shallow channel. In summer, blue sheep came there to feed. In winter, only the strongest returned. This morning, there were 3. A small group of blue sheep moved cautiously across the lower slope, heads low, bodies angled into the wind. Their coats blended into the mountain almost as well as the snow leopards did, grey and dull blue against stone. They stepped carefully, hooves testing each surface before committing weight. The snow leopard watched without urgency. Distance mattered here, angle mattered more. She measured the slope, the direction of their movement, the exact place where rock turned from solid slab into loose scree. She knew which stones would slide under sudden pressure and which would hold. She also knew the cost. Hunting at this altitude was expensive. Every step burned oxygen. Every leap risked injury that could not be survived. The margin for error was narrow enough to be felt in the chest. The snow leopard did not hunt often, but when she did, she hunted with full attention. She waited. The ridge shadow lengthened as the sun climbed behind cloud. Light here did not arrive cleanly. It fractured, reflected, scattered. Warmth lagged behind brightness. The rock beneath her chest stayed cold, leaching heat slowly, forcing her muscles to remain engaged even in stillness. Below, the blue sheep shifted position. One, a young male, lagged slightly behind the others. Not injured, not weak enough to be obvious, but his pauses were half a heartbeat longer. His head lifted more often. The snow leopard noticed. She lowered her chin a fraction, pressing her whiskers closer to the stone so they would not catch the wind. The mountain remained quiet. Too quiet. That was when she felt it. Not sound, not scent. Pressure. A change in how the rock held cold beneath her chest. A subtle vibration that arrived through bone rather than ear. The mountain answering something below. The snow leopard stiffened. Humans. Far away, but approaching. She did not see them yet. She did not need to. Humans moved differently. Their weight pressed into stone unevenly. Their pauses were wrong. Their presence changed how echoes returned. She remained still. If she moved now, she would be noticed, not by eyes, but by the mountain itself. Loose stone would answer quickly. Snow would slide. Sound would travel upward and betray her. She waited. The rock answered slowly. 2 men climbed the lower ridgeline an hour later. They were small against the mountain, dark shapes moving deliberately upward. Each step was placed with care, but they were still human, limited by breath, slowed by packs, bound to trails that animals ignored. One stopped often, lifting binoculars, scanning slopes. The other checked something on his wrist, a watch or GPS, then looked up, gauging distance and daylight. They were researchers. The snow leopard knew the difference. Researchers moved with intention, but not pursuit. Hunters moved differently, herders differently still. These men did not smell of fear or hunger. They smelled of equipment, wool, metal warmed briefly by skin. They were here to observe, still dangerous. Observation turned into patterns. Patterns turned into decisions. The snow leopard remained pressed into shadow as the men crossed below her line of sight, unaware of how close they were to something that could end them if startled at the wrong moment. She did not blink. The blue sheep below sensed the humans first. They froze, heads snapping up in unison, bodies aligned toward escape routes they had already memorized. They did not bolt immediately. The slope was too steep, too exposed for panic. The snow leopard felt the hunt collapse. Not lost, ended. She released the tension in her limbs slowly, carefully, allowing muscles to cool without twitching. A rushed relaxation could be as loud as movement. The sheep began to move away downslope, choosing safer ground farther from both ridge and humans. The snow leopard let them go. There would be other chances. There always were, until there weren't. The men passed beneath the ridge and disappeared into a fold of terrain. Only after their sound dissolved completely did the snow leopard move. She lifted her head first, testing air, reading the residue of human presence. Then she shifted her weight backward, pulling herself out of the shadow without dislodging stone. She stood fully for the first time that day. Her body was long and powerful, built for vertical worlds. Her paws were wide, furred between pads for insulation and grip. Her tail counterbalanced each step as she moved along the ridge, choosing a new position that overlooked a different basin. From there, she could see far. Cloud shadows moved slowly across peaks. Snow lines traced history into the slopes. Below, the path the men had taken cut briefly across stone, then vanished. The mountain returned to itself. Silence did not come back all at once. It settled in layers, first the absence of voices, then the absence of echo, finally the deep, heavy quiet that belonged only to high places. The snow leopard lay down again, this time in open light rather than shadow. She closed her eyes halfway. The rock beneath her chest warmed slightly, answering her weight in its own time, slowly. Just as it always did, the snow leopard did not leave the ridge. She shifted along it the way water moved along stone, never breaking contact, never committing fully to exposure. The sun slid higher, thinning the cold just enough to change how the air carried sound. What had been sharp at dawn softened. What had been hidden began to show itself. This was the dangerous hour. Morning favoured patience. Evening favoured movement. Midday belonged to mistakes. She paused beneath an overhang where wind had carved the rock inward over centuries. Snow had packed into the hollow and refrozen into something harder than ice, blue-grey and dense. Her flank pressed against it, stealing cold deliberately, keeping her muscles from overheating. Below, the basin shifted again. Not with prey, with absence. The blue sheep were gone now, reduced to memory and disturbed stones. In their place came nothing. No birds, no rodents daring to move, no insects clicking. The basin emptied in a way that was too complete to be natural. The snow leopard opened her eyes fully. This silence was not neutral. It leaned. She lifted her head and turned it slightly, aligning her ears not toward the valley but toward the far side of the ridge, where the mountain folded back on itself into unseen gullies. That was where the pressure came from. Not human this time. Heavier. A rival. She smelled him a moment later, faint, old, pulled thin by altitude and time. Another snow leopard, male, larger, passing through rather than holding, but close enough to matter. Territory at this height was not drawn with lines, it was written in overlap and timing. She did not own this ridge exclusively, but she used it often enough that intrusion demanded attention. She rose slowly, deliberately exposing herself against the skyline for just a moment. Not as a challenge, as a statement. Her tail lifted slightly, the tip twitching once before settling. She stepped onto a slab of rock that rang faintly under her weight, not loud enough to travel far, but enough to carry intention. The mountain answered with a subtle vibration. The scent shifted. The male moved downslope, choosing distance over conflict. The silence loosened. The snow leopard held her position until the pressure faded completely, until the basin resumed its scattered life. A bird testing the air, a pika darting between stones, the faint scratch of claws on lichen. Only then did she move again. By afternoon, clouds gathered. Not thick enough for snow, but dense enough to flatten light and erase contrast. The mountain became deceptive, depth collapsed, distances lied. Slopes that were far appeared close, shadows lost their meaning. The snow leopard navigated this with memory rather than sight. She moved along a route she had used since youth, stepping where stone had proven reliable, where snow bridged gaps safely rather than hiding them. Her body flowed through broken terrain without hesitation, each movement corrected before imbalance occurred. She descended slightly, not into the basin, but into a lateral shelf that cut across the mountain like a scar half-healed. From here, she could access multiple drainages without committing to any. She stopped at a narrow chute filled with wind-packed snow. Below it, tracks. Fresh. Blue sheep again. Different group, smaller. 2 adults and a lamb. They had passed recently, climbing rather than descending, drawn upward by safer ground and thinner snow. The lamb's tracks were uneven. The snow leopard studied them without emotion. Emotion wasted energy. She calculated instead slope angle, wind direction, the likelihood of unseen humans, the position of sun behind cloud. She lowered herself into a crouch, weight distributed perfectly across all 4 paws. Then she waited. Time passed. The cloud cover thickened further, dimming the world into muted grey. Snow began to fall. Not enough to hide tracks yet, but enough to soften edges. The snow leopard felt hunger rise. Not sharp, not urgent, but persistent. A reminder. The lamb bleated somewhere above, faint and thin. The sound cut the air. The snow leopard moved. She climbed the chute with controlled force, hind legs driving, forepaws gripping ice and stone with equal trust. Snow fell away beneath her, hissing down the slope, but she did not dislodge enough to betray her position. She emerged onto the upper shelf just as the blue sheep came into view. They froze. For a fraction of a second, predator and prey balanced in the same stillness, suspended by altitude and breath. Then the mountain broke it. A gust of wind tore across the ridge, scattering scent and sound, ripping information away from both sides. The sheep bolted uphill. The snow leopard launched. She did not chase blindly. She angled, forcing the sheep toward a narrow passage where rock pinched movement and footing became uncertain. The lamb stumbled, not fell, hesitated. That was enough. The snow leopard struck from the side, her weight and momentum doing more than claws ever could. Both bodies slammed into stone, snow exploding outward in a white burst. The sound was sharp, final. She held the lamb until the movement stopped, chest heaving, heart hammering against ribs that had learned to tolerate thin air. Above her, the adult sheep vanished over the ridge, hooves clattering, stones tumbling in delayed cascades. The snow leopard dragged the lamb into cover immediately, pulling it behind a rock wall where wind could not reach and scent would settle low. She fed quickly, efficiently, tearing flesh, swallowing warmth. Blood darkened snow, then froze almost at once. As she ate, she listened. No human voices, no answering movement from the male. The mountain accepted the kill. Evening approached slowly. The clouds thinned, revealing pale light that slid across peaks without warmth. Shadows lengthened again, reclaiming edges and folds. The snow leopard cached what remained, covering it with snow and stone, pressing it down with practiced care. She would return if allowed. She climbed back toward the ridge, not to the same shadow as before, but to another, slightly higher, where the wind spoke honestly and rock answered slowly. She lay down, body aligned with the slope, tail curled. Below her, the basin breathed again. Above her, the sky cleared. The mountain had shifted around her, humans passing, rivals testing boundaries, prey revealing weakness, but she remained. Not because she dominated the ridge, but because she understood when to wait, when to move, and when to let the mountain decide. And the mountain, ancient, indifferent, exact, held her weight without protest. Slowly, as it always did. Night did not erase the mountain, it refined it. As light drained from the sky, the ridge did not disappear into darkness, but sharpened into fewer, harder truths. Edges that had been softened by cloud returned with definition. Cold gathered where shadow deepened, pooling in bowls and gullies, pressing down into every fracture in the rock. The snow leopard woke before full dark. She had slept lightly, the way animals slept when the ground beneath them could change its mind. Her eyes opened without urgency. Her breathing slowed, then stilled as she tested the air. The mountain was quiet, but not empty. Sound had thinned rather than vanished. Far below, stone still ticked and shifted as it cooled. Ice contracted in hairline cracks. Wind slid along the ridge crest without dropping into the basin. These were honest sounds. They belonged. She rose and shook once, sending a faint shimmer through her fur, snow dust lifting and settling again. Her body was stiff from cold and exertion, but intact. No injury announced itself. That mattered more than hunger. She moved upslope, not toward prey, not toward shelter, but toward information. At the ridgeline, she paused and looked down into the basin she had hunted in earlier. From here, depth collapsed into shadow, but memory filled the gaps. She knew where scree lay loose, where slabs angled just enough to shed weight, where snow bridged emptiness deceptively. The kill site lay hidden now, sealed beneath stone and snow. Its scent was muted by cold, pressed downward, held close to the ground. That was good. Cold preserved more than meat. It preserved opportunity. The mountain held breath. Then it released it. A sound rose slowly, not sharp, not sudden. A low, distant clatter as stone shifted somewhere far below, answering gravity after a long delay. The snow leopard felt it through her pads before she heard it. Something had moved. Not prey, not human. Earth? A small slide, no larger than a room collapsing into itself, hidden by darkness and distance. The mountain adjusting its balance. She remained still. Animals that lived here did not flinch at the mountain speaking. They listened for how it spoke. This had not been violent. It had been patient. She turned her head slightly and listened again. No echo followed. The mountain was done, for now. Later, the wind changed direction. It came down slope this time, carrying information with it instead of tearing it away. Scent travelled cleanly, flattened by cold. She smelled the male again. Closer than before, not approaching her position directly, but moving parallel, testing the same shelves she had used hours earlier. He had circled wide, as she had once done, choosing caution over assertion. She did not respond immediately. Territory at night was negotiated differently, sound carried farther, scent lingered longer, mistakes echoed. She stepped onto an exposed slab and scraped once with her hind paw, dislodging a small cascade of pebbles that rattled down the slope. Not loud, not aggressive, present. She urinated briefly on a rock face where the wind would spread it downslope, then stepped back into shadow. The mountain carried the message. Minutes passed, then the male moved away, his scent thinning, redirecting toward another drainage. No challenge followed, no escalation. The silence softened again. The snow leopard lay down where she was, chest pressed to cold stone, tail curled tight. Her eyes remained open, reflecting starlight. She rested without sleeping. Near dawn, the cold deepened. The sky paled slowly, stars dimming one by one. Frost crept across exposed rock, stitching white into cracks. Snow that had fallen earlier hardened into crust. The snow leopard stood. This was the hour when decisions mattered. She descended carefully toward the cache, not directly, but along a contour that kept her above the coldest air pooling in the basin. Her paws found purchase without thought. Her body moved as if guided by the stone itself. At the cache, she uncovered part of the lamb and fed again, methodical, tearing frozen flesh with jaws built for this exact resistance. She ate until warmth returned to her limbs, then stopped. Overfeeding dulled awareness. She covered the remains once more and stepped back. From below, faint sound rose, human again. Voices, carried thinly by morning air. Too distant to matter immediately, but near enough to count. She lifted her head. The mountain had begun another shift. She did not wait for it to finish. Instead, she climbed. Higher this time, away from the basin entirely, toward a spine of rock that led into older ground where slopes broke unpredictably and human paths failed. As she moved, the sun crested behind cloud and painted the peaks in pale gold. Light touched her fur briefly, revealing pattern and power, then slid away as she entered shadow again. From the ridge, she looked back once. The basin lay quiet, holding the memory of movement. Blood, sound, and silence layered into stone and snow. Humans would pass through it. Sheep would return. The mountain would rearrange itself slowly, without concern. The snow leopard turned away. She did not belong to the ridge. The ridge belonged to her only as long as she listened. And as she moved into higher ground, where rock answered even more slowly and silence carried weight, the mountain held her passage without resistance, recording it not as story, but as pressure briefly applied and then released, as it always did.